I'm here in Prabhupada's room in Hawaii. 35 years worth of work in my dedication to Srila Prabhupada, and this is my tribute to him of what that work is, the 4 pillars of Vedic economics, Prabhupada's program. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Prashachadi Shatarne. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So I present this to the devotees as much as an extension of my own service to share as a package for the devotees to use. The last elections we saw the devotees, all of whom claimed they are not politically involved or interested, simply to spend literally weeks of time arguing different points. So rather than deciding if gun rights or free markets best represents us, why don't we start with Prabhupada's platform and judge the political system and politicians based upon Prabhupada's principles. Now, to begin with, we need to know what those are. A number of devotees cannot answer what are the 4 principles of Prabhupada's social economic program. And here they are, as I've understood them, to present to you to begin that discussion. Number 1, our economic policy platform is self-sustainability. Cottage industry, agrarian-based communities, and locally based. So we have provided that through our American Shopping Party, which we'll go into in more detail. Number 2, our ideology. So are we socialists? Are we capitalists? We say it's not one or the other, but actually 4, anarchy, monarchy, socialism, capitalism. Number 3, Varnashram Dharma. Varnashram Dharma is our ideology. That's number 2. Number 3 is our policy platform. Our policy platform is the 4 regulative principles as we've translated it into lifestyle insurance. And number 5 is bhakti. That is our work model. And so I'll go into a summary of how these have played out in my work over the last 30 years building out these ideas. So the first is the American Shopping Party. I spent about 8 months. I did have to do this from the park as a homeless man, having to walk sometimes an hour and a half because I did not have the $2.50 for the bus. But I got the nearly 2,000 signatures required to get on the ballot as the American Shopping Party. Our tagline, sustainability begins with how we spend our money. Every dollar is a vote. So people are a little taken back by the title, but they love the tagline. So it's a simple premise. If we can get 300,000 residents of Hawaii to buy locally made 1 day a month on the first Saturday, every store will then carry something locally made. It's a simple premise that actually everyone finds both amusing and very doable. If we can get 10 to 15% of the tourists to join us, that would be $2 billion in new business for local business. So people really like that. The only problem that I was having was that it just sounded too good to be true. People were like, okay, is this a front for something else? So if we just had a little bit of a backup so they could see that this is not a Republican conspiracy or corporate conspiracy, people are like, I'm already doing it. It sounds great. I'm in. So in order to get the nearly 2,000 signatures, at first it was like 1 signature for every 6 people I talked to. By the time I finished, I was getting up almost 1 out of 2. So I probably talked to about 4,000 or 5,000 people. And the next big question people had was, well, is this Democrat or Republican? You know, are you for Hillary or for? So it was very polarized. 2016. This is when we had it up and running. And I said, well, actually, we're saying that it's not about a choice of socialism versus capitalism, one or the other, but that America is actually made up of 4 different social ideological systems and the perfect balance of those. So the U.S. Constitution is provide for a monarchy, and people think it might be the bankers or it might be, you know, the royalty or the politicians, and I say no, it's the U.S. military, where the president is given so much authority that you actually trade your civilian rights in to work under his command, the commander-in-chief. They don't call it a dictatorship or monarchy. but in general, it pretty much functions in that way. So here we have complete government control, and then the U.S. Constitution went and made for a whole other segment of society, which has, that is supposed to be free of government tampering. Religion, separation of church and state. Media, the fifth estate. Higher education, therefore the teachers have tenure. Medicine, supposed to be free of government tampering. And law, government should not be above the law. So people found that really fascinating. It was a little much for them to hear, but they were like, wow. So to present Varnashram in that light was not a matter of ideology or a philosophy essay for the devotees. This was something that was taken out to the road. So in order to get 4,000 or 5,000 people to stop, I had to approach, I would get 1 out of 4 to stop. So I approached between 12 to 15,000 people to talk to the, so I've done the homework here. So they found that very amusing. They liked that. So that is the American shopping party with our ideology. So America, and so our punchline was that what really makes America great was the balance between these 4 different social ideological systems. And again, people thought that was fascinating. And for those that wanted a little bit more information, I would talk about the currency. So the currency of a Kshatriya is power, the currency of a Vaishya is money. For the Sudra, the worker, it is to be able to allow to produce and create beautiful things. And for the Brahmins, it's about being right. So the Brahmin doesn't care. He'll trade in power, money, and creating things to be right. The Kshatriya will trade in being right or wrong, the money and the power and the production in order to hold the power. Vaishya, the same thing. So they each have their own currency. And with that currency comes privileges and obligations or dharmas. So the dharma for the Vaishya, Vedically, is taking care of the animals, the cows, taking care of the workers, and taking care of the land. So America has those dharmic institutions already up and running. You have the PETA for animals, you have unions for labor, and you have the environmental movement. So they're actually there to instill the Dharma side. For Kshatriya, it is protection, and so we have the the Miranda rights. The government cannot go into your home. So those are the obligations of the Kshatriya. For unions, set the standard of craftsmanship for the workers. So these are actually the Dharma sides. So when you present this, it provides a new clarity of function and purpose for each of those, and that's what we're offering. And people are amused with the idea that it's not either or socialist or capitalism. Very powerful. Anyway, so that's the Varnashram Dharma as it's translated with the political work I've done here in Hawaii. And that takes us to the 4 regulative principles. So I had just gotten back from India in '96, and Clinton had just gone after the tobacco industry, and the headline screamed $100 billion a year to cover the medical cost of smokers. And that's when $100 billion used to be a lot of money. I believe it was more than the entire gross national product of the entire billion people in India that I had just come visiting. And I was thinking, well, if it's $100 billion for smokers, how much would it be for the other, sinful activities? So when I got some money about 10 years later, I hired an economics group for about $30,000. And it's not an economic group, it is the economic group for all the bad boys. So they work for the Brewers of America, the Atlantic gaming industry, Liggett's, I think it is, the largest tobacco company. And so he does the numbers for those industries. So these are industry numbers. And according to those numbers, we are spending between $1 to $2 trillion a year on the cost of vice. So here's a man that here's an organization that works with it, and it never occurred to them to look at this, the total social cost, medical cost of vices. So he was like, this is very interesting. Seeing an economist get excited about numbers is always, super nerdy. And he said, you know what? This is really interesting for 2 reasons. Everyone already knows that vice is really expensive. Like somebody went across the country and educated him. Nobody ever looked at it. So you don't need to educate the public about it. You're just offering a novelty perspective, which the people will find interesting. He said, but you know, when our punchline was greater the vice, greater the price. He said, but if you call it lifestyle, it doesn't have the antagonism and judgmental. You'll probably go further with it. So the punchline of that is that if people discovered the economic cost, the social cost of their lifestyle, that we could reduce the cost of both taxes and insurance by 50%. So we came out with that book just in time for Obamacare, and I was like, nobody's going to be interested. Now, put it on the shelf for 10 years. Here we are. Republicans are making a mad dash for health care. So I take it to D.C., and I'm now jumping members of Congress in the hallway, which you're not supposed to do. They'll throw you out. But it was such a tease. Not one complaint in almost a year. So I had my Aloha shirt on with the flower garland, with the big smile. Aloha, Congressman. Did you get our simple solution to the healthcare crisis? And it's just such a, because everyone else is in blue suits. You get a bit of a free pass with the Hawaii thing. And then I look like a smart guy. They look at me and they're like, there's no such, like literally 10 to 15% of them just broke out laughing. Like, there's no such thing. And I would say, lifestyle insurance. It's a magical term. It has universal recognition. You can say it to anyone. It just sounds like it might be the answer. And when I would see that, then I would say this one line. I got this one line off to between 200 to 300 members. And I would say 50% of all medical costs is lifestyle related. It's a universal. Anyone that knows anything about healthcare knows this to be a simple opening premise, except for the doctors who corrected me, who said it's actually more, significantly more so in some cases. And then the next sentence, if the government is covering the bulk of that, and this is where the Republicans are shaking their head, and I say if we take that and hand that to lifestyle markets, we could reduce the cost by as much as 50%. Nobody contested the 50%, but they wanted to know what a lifestyle market is. So that one sentence, I got it off to most of the, got it off to Graham, got it off to, anyway, I'll have to go through the list again, but they liked it. Get that to my staff, get that to my office, they liked it. Then for about another 60%, I got off the remaining two sentences. The example we give, if we took the smokers from the government Medicare program, the government Medicaid program, the Social Security program, the Veterans Affairs program. In other words, 45 million smokers in America. Government's covering maybe 25 million of them, and they're all splayed out over dozens of different programs. You put them in one service, they'll get a better service. It will cost less money. In other words, you have economies of scale. And they're shaking their heads. They're intrigued. And I say our simple solution is specialized medicine around lifestyle-related healthcare. So I would get to see a member, and then I would just stop right there, turn around, and leave. So they were like, oh, that was, I wasn't asking for anything. It was and then I would see them again, just like, did you get part two? And they're like, well, what's part two? Well, part two is that when you take that, the smokers from Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, put them in one program, that's a private company. We've just privatized $5 to $10 trillion worth of government health care. The insurance industry that has been the saboteurs of every health care program of the last 50 years, they are now vested and very interested. We only need to get big enough to get their interest. And for the Republicans, they loved that. The Democrats, they weren't comfortable with it. They just couldn't find a reason why. And they were just having too much fun watching the Republicans suffer as they, struggled through their own healthcare proposal. And then I would see them again 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I was like, did you get part three? So they liked what they heard, and I developed a rapport, and it was time for the close, and the close is really simple. Would you take our pamphlet? This was the pamphlet. I would give it to them after I got a few nods from them. Would you take our pamphlet and hand it to your committee? If you're on the Finance Committee, if you're on the Ways and Means Committee, if you're on the Budget Committee. And that would have been the close. And it's something that's sort of incidental and easy for them to do. Unfortunately, I was forced to have to come back here to Hawaii. So this is the 4 regulative principles. It's Prabhupada's program, and it has great traction. And so then that brings us to Bhakti. and or love. And so we're saying that the progression of work has gone from man as beast, which is the old slavery model or the serf model, to man as machine, the old industrial age, to the age of technology, which is that the primary factor of education and work ethic in an age of technology is your creative prowess. And that all begins and ends with the things that you love, of which love of God is love at its highest resonance. So that is our economic model. If you're Democrat or Republican, Democrats are about government intervention for their economics, Republicans free markets. We're saying whichever one you want to go with, make sure it's self-sustaining. Our ideology applies for the Democrats and the Republicans and the monarchists and the anarchists. People love it. And our policy platform, you cover your own social costs. When I first started this, some devotees may remember, it was called the Economics of Love and Hate. A pack of cigarettes was going for just $1.70 back then, and the social cost was $4, $4.50. They're like, you're never going to get the tobacco industry to ever agree to pay this. Well, here we are 25, almost 30 years later, and a pack of cigarettes is going for $10 and $12, which is between 2 and 3 times the social cost. So under our program, they would actually be able to provide the service for free. So we're actually now an alternative that they would be interested in. And then bhakti, or love. And when people align themselves with love, then things naturally flow, of which create the creative prowess is at its heightened. So this is what we're offering. The timing can't be better. This is not a philosophical consideration, but the pertinence with Tulsi Gabbard now running for president. Many devotees don't even realize we have 4 members in Congress that are Hindus. So I got to 3 of them. They were all intrigued. If we can take something of this nature and say, this is our platform, we can begin soliciting the politicians that are going to be running. And so that is the purpose of this. And this is my tribute to Srila Prabhupada, 35 years as a devotee. And my feeling was when I could see these very smart men in Congress, and they would start hitting me with their, and I had an answer for everything that they said, and they were impressed. I realized that was the fulfillment of Prabhupada's vision of creating a class of men that could provide spiritual vision to the leaders of the world, and I felt that was fulfilled.